Hi class, in this video I am going to go over the instructions for the final research paper. I am also going to explain the process that is going to lead to the research paper. So as some of you know, if you read the syllabus, before you submit the research paper, you're also going to submit a topic proposal and an annotated bibliography. So I'll go ahead and go over those right now, but of course the first thing we should all do is look at the instructions to understand what the research paper is asking for. So basically for this research paper, what we are doing is we are looking at a border issue and we're exploring it more in depth. So we're going to research its history, its background. We're also going to explore the multiple perspectives that surround this topic. So we're going to explore how it affects people, how it affects the government, what the government has done about it. We're also going to maybe look at if it has any economic impact, if it has any impact on the education on the border, if it has any impact on the business. So obviously not all topics impact business on the border, but if your topic does, then you should address it in the essay. So like I said, the purpose of this research paper is to look at that issue through multiple perspectives, to really look at it from all sides and to really understand the background and the history of the issue. So you can select the same topic that you wrote about for your editorial essay, or you can go ahead and select a completely new topic. If you are going to select the one from your editorial essay, since this is a research paper, you are going to have to expand on it a little bit more. Some ideas for topics that I included here have to do with immigration, violence, tourism, border security, business, education, migrant caravans, international bridges, and the economy. Obviously, this is not a complete list. You can pick topics that are not from this list, but one of the things I do want to point out is that my topics are a little bit broad, and the reason for that is because, like for example, international bridges. When it comes to this, I can talk about how some of them are in poor condition. I can also talk about the safety of them. I could also talk about the long lines, how something needs to be done in order to alleviate the long lines and the waiting. Or I could focus on all those things, or I could only focus on one of those things if I feel that's sufficient for my research paper. In any case, something I should point out is that this is an informative paper, so you are not choosing a side. Usually when it comes to writing an argumentative essay, you have to select one side and you have to provide reasons to support it. For this paper, it's informative because we're looking at all different sides, we're looking at all different perspectives. Something else that I should point out is that the topic does not have to pertain only to El Paso. As long as it pertains to the US-Mexico border, your topic will work. So for example, if you want to focus on cartel violence has affected mostly the Juarez area, but for the most part, El Paso is a pretty safe city. It's still one of the safest cities in the country. So just because we are a fairly safe city does not mean that you cannot address violence in other border cities like Brownsville or Tijuana or anything like that. So I do want you to keep in mind that it doesn't have to be based in El Paso. It can be based in other border cities as long as it's a topic that affects the US-Mexico border. Of course, we do want to make sure that we mostly focus on issues that are present on the US side of it, just because focusing on issues that only pertain to the Mexican side, that would involve a lot more research and that would involve using Mexican sources and translating sources and getting to know the law and getting to know like the policies and demographics, which obviously we're not going to do for this research paper. So try to focus on an issue that affects the US-Mexico border, which is in between, but we're mostly looking at it through the American side, through that perspective. So moving on with the research paper content, your research paper should address the following. It should address the historical background information as well as any important information that you feel the audience needs to know. So what background information is important for us to understand this issue? For example, for international bridges, you could talk about when the first one was built, how they evolved, the policies that surround them, things like that. So that brings us to the second bullet point, which again I mentioned, how has this evolved, changed throughout the years? Tourism, education, all of those things have changed throughout the year. I think as someone who's lived on the border my whole life, I think that pretty much everything has changed over the years, right? So again, how has this changed? How has policies changed? How do we view it differently? How was it viewed before as opposed to now? So you're really tracing the trajectory of that issue. Also, you want to address who is impacted by the issue. Obviously, it's easy to say, well, the entire border city is impacted. But for example, when it comes to education, um, education obviously impacts the kids the most, parents, but it also affects the cities when it comes to like finding jobs, people leaving. It affects the universities, it affects the colleges. So you really want to think about who's impacted by the issue and how are they impacted by the issue. So another thing that you want to think about is how does it affect the people, right? So how does it affect the people of the border area in terms of economy, population, resources, businesses, education, etc. So again, not all topics are going to cover every single of these areas, but for example, the international bridges, they do affect businesses. They do affect education because a lot of people cross over to go to school. They also affect the economy. I don't know if they really affect the population. They might because some people might just move over here instead of having to cross the bridges all the time. Uh, in terms of resources, they definitely affect our resources. So a topic like border, like international bridges, would pretty much affect all of these right here that I've outlined. So other topics like education, I don't know if education might not really have a huge effect on population, though some might argue that it does because if you don't get a good education, or if you get a really good education here, a lot of people with college degrees, they end up moving out of El Paso because they can't find professional jobs here in El Paso. So that might be another topic. Also, we can't forget that we are sort of a military town, so there's a lot of topics that surround military in El Paso. So again, some of those might only affect certain areas. It might not necessarily affect education, but you can still write about those topics because it affects economy, businesses, resources, safety, things like that. So you also want to look at the local government's perspective. So what is the government's view on this topic? How have they dealt with the issue before? What have they done to try to solve it? What have they done to address it? So that is mostly where you're going to have to do some research. Now, for some topics, you might find that maybe the government has not been that involved. That's okay. You can write in your essay that there has been no government involvement in this. They have not addressed the issue at all. So you can go ahead and say that. Don't feel like, oh, there's no government involvement. They've never addressed this issue. I can't write about it. Yes, you can. Just try to write about it in terms of they haven't addressed it. Why do you think that is? Are they not aware of it? Or are they just simply ignoring the issue? So this one had to do with the local government. The next question has to do with the federal government. So again, what has the federal government done to address that issue? Sometimes the local government acts, whereas the federal government does not. So again, how have they dealt with, how have they reacted to it? What have they done to try to address the issue? One of the last things you want to address in your essay is the future of the issue. Do you think this will be resolved? For example, if I'm writing about the bridges, do I ever think there's going to be short lines? I don't know, probably not. Maybe. I would have to do research on the topic, but as long as I can remember, there's been long lines at the bridges. Back then, the lines for pedestrian people crossing over were not that long, but now they're really long too. So if I was writing about that, maybe I could say I don't think the issue is going to resolve. I think it's going to get worse. That's okay to say that. You know, it's about being realistic, right? So if you don't think the issue is going to get better, then go ahead and discuss why. Also, the very last question, which you should probably address in your conclusion, is that why is this issue important to the border area? So a lot of times we talk about things like violence, immigration, and we don't take into consideration other topics. So why is this issue important to the border area? Again, who does it affect? How is it affecting the people? Why should we care about this topic? So as you can see, your essay should cover all of these right here, but there's no sense, like I cannot tell you each one of these should be a paragraph because that's not necessarily the case for each topic. So depending on your topic, you might need to provide a page or a page and a half of history because the topic is very complicated. Some of us might have simpler topics where I only have to do 2 paragraphs of background information. That's fine. Just keep in mind that we have 5 to 7 pages to write this paper, and this does not include the reference page. So when we get to the reference page, you are going to need 5 sources, 5 outside sources. So this means that you need to do outside research, and only one of these sources can be a website. And the reason for that is because we want to go ahead and use more academic sources. So again, you can pick something like an article from the New York Times, from the Atlantic, from Time.com, from the San Diego Tribune. All of those count as online periodicals slash online articles. However, something like Fox News, CNN.com, a government website, those count as websites. So you can only have one of those. And of course, please make sure that your sources are credible. I teach English 111, so I know that in English 111 you should have been taught how to evaluate sources. If you're not sure how to do that, I do have some information on evaluating sources under the APA module. So something else to keep in mind is that these sources are going to be compiled into an annotated bibliography. So now that we've gone over these instructions, we're going to address the process that we're going to go through when writing this research paper. So this is going to be a series of assignments. So basically, the research paper process is going to be broken up into 3 steps. The first step is to go ahead and write a topic proposal memo. So this topic proposal memo is going to be the first thing you submit. And basically what it is going to be a memo which should be formatted as an actual memo. As we see right here, I've included a template. So basically, what you're going to do is you're going to tell us what your topic is, what you're going to be discussing, why it's important, why you selected this topic. You're also going to write a working thesis just to make sure that your topic is pretty specific and narrowed down. We don't want to have broad topics like I told you when we went over the list. Something like a topic like education or immigration, that needs to be narrowed down because there are so many things that you can talk about. So topics like that would need to be narrowed down a little bit more. Also, you want to tell us what effect does your topic have on the borderland and its people. So basically, the topic proposal is all about telling us what your topic is. You want to show that you've thought about it, that you've actually considered its importance and significance, and you also want to tell us what sources you are planning on using. Now, whenever it comes to writing this topic proposal, make sure you discuss at least one resource that you're looking at. So don't just say, I'm going to use articles. Well, name at least one article that you're thinking of using. You don't have to end up using it, but at least name one article that you're thinking of using. And there is a rubric for the memo, so definitely go ahead and look at that rubric because, like I tell you, one of the criteria is, does the proposal discuss possible sources and demonstrates minimal research has been done? I always have a lot of students who just tell me I'm going to use sources or I'm going to use a journal. That does not show that minimal research has done. And it is important that you do some research before you submit your topic proposal because you don't want to select a topic and then I approve it and then you realize there's nothing out there in terms of sources. That means that you're going to have to change your topic and you're going to have to submit another topic proposal. And that just takes up too much time. So again, think about your topic first. Think about why it's important. Think about why you selected it. Do some research and then go ahead and write your memo. Once I read your memo, I will let you know if the topic is approved or not. Typically, I do approve them since most people do follow the topic guidelines, but in the case that I tell you, you need to fix this or you need to talk a little bit more about this so that I understand what your topic is. Like I said, if you tell me that your topic is immigration, I'll probably tell you, well, what about immigration? So in the topic proposal, you do need to be specific so that I know exactly what you're going to write about and so that I can see that what the importance of the topic is. If you do that, then your topic is more likely to be approved. So now we move on to the second step. So the second step of the research process is to do the annotated bibliography. Now, for this one, we are going to have a reader response that is an annotated bibliography worksheet. So basically for that assignment, all you have to do is find one source and then you have to fill out the worksheet. And the whole purpose of that is to help you with the formatting of the annotated bibliography. But what we're going to talk about in this video, we're going to talk about the actual annotated bibliography. So the annotated bibliography, I feel like a lot of people are intimidated by it, but basically what an annotated bibliography is that you summarize all of your sources and you evaluate them critically. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to have 5 sources for your research paper, and those 5 sources are going to be cited in the annotated bibliography, and under each source you should include, in paragraph form, you should include a summary of the source, and you should also evaluate the source. Are there biases, inconsistencies, fallacies, lack of evidence? And the last thing you should do is you should answer, are you going to use this source in your essay? Why or why not? So essentially, like I said, an annotated bibliography is you cite the source in APA, then in a short paragraph, you address these 3 points. And you do that for every single source. Obviously, the sources should be cited in APA. So let me show you an example of an annotated bibliography. So as you can see right here, we have an example. We have a source by Willingham K. from 1993. It's an article called Hemingway's The Garden of Eden, Writing in the Body, the Hemingway Review, Volume 12, pages 46 to 61. This is actually a source that I used in one of my essays a long time ago when I was in grad school. So I had to do an annotated bibliography, so this is what I wrote. And as you can see, I summarize the article. I go ahead and I evaluate it, and then I go ahead and say if I'm going to use it at the very end. So again, the annotated bibliography, fairly short. All you have to do is cite the source and then answer these 3 bullet points in a paragraph underneath the source. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that obviously your annotated bibliography is going to be organized in alphabetical order, just like you would organize an APA reference page. So the annotated bibliography is going to be the last step before you actually submit your research paper. So once you've completed your annotated bibliography, after that, the final thing you're going to submit is going to be the research paper. So that's what I meant by the research paper process is broken up into 3 steps: the topic proposal, the annotated bibliography, and then of course the final draft of the research paper. So please let me know if you have any questions. I'd be glad to answer them. And also please let me know if you need any help with APA, finding a topic, finding sources. I'm available to help you. Also, don't forget that the library can also help you find sources. And also the ARC, the Academic Readiness Center, has a lot of tutors available to help you with the writing process as well.